Good evening, all, and
Evening.
welcome. If as long as people are happy, we'll continue the recording. There's several people asked for a copy of what's happened this evening, so we'll put that on YouTube after. The host for this evening is Dawn Chalmers. So the big thing before I hand over to Dawn is we'll use the chat box quite a lot. And some people won't be able to see everyone. We've currently got 18 on board. One or two extra may just sneak in, and I don't know where Jenny is, if she's on the bus or the train or where. She's on the train, she says. There we go. So you use the chat, and that way we can do it. And if you use reactions, you can put up your hand automatically and we'll see it. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Dawn, who's going to lead us this evening. Dawn.
Thank you very much, Ken. Sorry, you're going to have to bear with me. I've sort of done one meeting after another today, and then quickly went to see my horse, and I was just trying to remember if I've actually brushed my hair before I've come on here. So nobody's looking too alarmed, so I'm guessing I'm looking okay. So thank you all very much for coming along this evening. Hopefully that shows we've got a good level of interest in where we're going with this. I was wondering, because I don't know everybody here, if you could all just pop your names and where you're from in the chat box, and that way we can sort of see where everybody is coming from. Obviously Jenny's on her way to Doncaster. But it'd just be good to see how spread out we are, or if we're quite sort of local to the northeast, or where we're all coming from. So I think I can see a few people here that were at the last meeting too, and that's really good that obviously we did manage to capture some imaginations with what we spoke about last time. So I think what we're going to do initially is look at the story so far. And I don't know, Ken, are you doing this bit, or Paul, you have a bit of a graphic?
I'm hoping.
Funny story about the graphic. I think it's supposed to be leaves, and I must be having a hard time just now because I saw wine being poured into a glass when I looked at it, which says more about me than anything else.
I don't know if Paul has it.
It was people's thoughts from last time about what they thought a new Rotary should look like.
So Paul, have you got that? So there's no answer, but I'll find it as we're speaking. So here we go. There we go.
Okay, so these are all the things last time that people suggested that they would want to see in a new kind of Rotary. And I'm sure lots of these things are in existing Rotary clubs as they are, but it was just so we knew what was important for people. So I wonder if there's anybody here that wasn't at the last meeting. Could you put in the chat box the 3 things that you would want to see in a new Rotary offering? Or even if anybody was here last time and they've thought of some new ones from last time, please feel free to add them into the chat. And then we can continue building on our plant here, which is clearly not wine being poured into a glass.
And I've had a notice that Sharon Hassan is in the waiting room.
I'm in now, Roddy.
You're in now, thanks, great.
And Roddy, I've made you co-host so you can let people in as well.
Oh, thanks, Ken. Yeah.
So Sharon, I don't know if you caught that about putting in the chat 3 things you would want to see in a new Rotary offering. These are obviously the things that came out of the last meeting. Doesn't have to be 3. If you can only think of 2, or if you can think of 4, feel free to share them. So no structures, that's interesting. I think we spoke about that last time, didn't we, Brian, that there was an awful lot of red tape and committees about committees and
presidents and
whatever else.
So there's a few things going in there. Hands-on service, hands-on service, hands-on service. There you go.
So it seems to be that everybody's sort of thinking along the same lines, that they want to be out and doing, and that we would want to be looking at projects for any new group that goes forward. So with that in mind, sorry, we're making great use of the chat function this evening. What sort of projects would people want to see? Because if we're to go ahead with this, we really want to have in mind what it is that people want to do. I mean, when I started thinking about this new group and thinking about projects, I actually just ended up with a big list of everything that I like to do, charities that resonate me, and the things I like to eat, basically. And I somehow managed to make all of those things into projects. So, but I think if you start with what interests you, that's probably a very good place to start from. Interactors, more involved. Fundraising, fellowship, face-to-face meetings. I think face-to-face will be important. I think that keeps the social aspect running for us. Environment, that's obviously a big one. Brian, what communities need? So Brian, when you're saying what communities need, have you got any thoughts on how we find out what the communities need, how you would go about that?
there's been a couple of clubs. I think Arbroath was one of my clubs in Area 5, and they turned to the community to find out what they wanted. And it was community spaces and gardens and whatever. And it's really what I'm thinking of is generally doing that kind of thing. So instead of just what the club or whatever local Rotary thinks people need, is to find out what the community needs and then help deliver it.
Okay, so any suggestions how we contact the various communities or how we go about asking?
It's not easy. It's linking with community groups. I mean, personally, I've tried it in Broughty Ferry on the community council, but it's very hard because there are so many community groups. And I don't know if Rotary can position itself as the heart of all of that, or whether to tap in to what's going on. It's not easy at all.
I think especially given the pandemic, there have been even more community groups set up to address different areas. Obviously, mental health has been a big one. There's been more groups around that. So I guess for everyone, please jump in if I'm off target, but I think there's going to be something different in each area, because obviously community groups are very particular to an area and the local needs. So those sort of things,
So
how we're going to run those projects and link them, but then we can have separate projects in each area. It doesn't have to be the same.
Can I jump in as well on that one?
Of course you can.
One of the things that Forest Rotary are doing is inviting the community groups into one showcase event on the 2nd of April, and asking them to share what they do, because a lot of people, how often have you heard that there's nothing to do? But if we can get them to say, here's what we can offer you and what can you offer us, here's the type of things we need, perhaps as a community, we can actually develop something so much better. That's one way of doing it, and I know that's been done elsewhere. I think Ellen did it a while ago from memory. Okay.
So that's quite good, because if we don't have to, if there's a sort of a format there that worked, then we can just pick brains to find out how we could then run with that. I'm going to have a look at what else was on the chat. So Roddy, you've said foundation. Is there anything in particular you would see through that? How we would...
I just put my hand up to come in with what's being said just now, because
Sorry.
generally at the last few meetings, it's been, let's get away from the rigid structures of committees and such like. But given the nature of this potential new club, we're actually go all over the place. And it seems to me perfectly acceptable for individual Rotarians to do things in the name of Rotary without having to form a group to do it. And I'm conscious, in fact, even where I stay, of individuals who do a phenomenal job just themselves, but actually they could do it on behalf of Rotary.
Mm-hmm.
So it isn't always necessary for groups to go and meet with bigger groups, because that can lead you once again into more meetings.
That's very true. And I think when we were looking at this group, we were also thinking that we're all part of Rotary. So not only could you do things individually, it doesn't matter which other Rotary group that you're tying in with, you should be able to join in, and vice versa. There should be no sort of like boundaries or grey areas. Everybody should be able to join in. Sorry, Kath, you had your hand up, missed that.
I was going to be just not controversial, but I think picking up something that Roddy had said there, although I put my hand up before Roddy spoke, but just to echo that if people are spread out throughout a wide geographical area, it might be difficult to get together to do things. And of course, you can go to your local Rotary club and help them. But what about thinking about, as an early project, doing something internationally? Mike from Kilryman wrote about district grant application. And if you manage to work, I mean, a district grant, you don't have to work with another Rotary club, but if, for example, you were able to work with another Rotary club internationally, you could meet, if you like, in this format on Zoom, and then meet with the international club. I would like to say that this is an idea I thought up this evening, but it's not, because my own club has been working with a club in Nepal for over a year on a project, a girls' hygiene project. Now, the Nepalese, they do the work. We do most of the fundraising. And again, picking up what Roddy said, one of the main fundraisers, although she's in the club, did the fundraising individually. She had garden parties in the summer. But that brings a group together, planning a project. You come together with another group of Rotarians and you work together on it. So it's just a thought where you don't actually get the hands-on experience, though I wrote that 3 times before, but you if you like, get the hands-on of being part of a project.
Okay.
So,
and that actually also goes to show it doesn't matter where you're based to be able to work with other people. If you're working with a club in Nepal, it doesn't matter whether you're 2 minutes down the road or 2,000 miles. It's irrelevant, really. So
yes.
That's really encouraging.
The only thing to watch for time differences, because when we meet with them, it's 2 o'clock in their afternoon and it's back at 8 in the morning with us. I don't mind, but others do.
That would be really good, and it might be interesting to hear, you know, as we progress, more about how you've done that and how you've gone about it, and pick your brains a bit more on that one too. Okay, who have we got? Bob, the E-Club of Innovation. Yes, I think
Irene has her hand up as well.
Yes, I can't actually see who has their hand up, so Ken's having to tell me. It's not on my screen. Sorry, Irene, we'll come to you next then. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, I think I'd just quite like to respond to this international theme. I wasn't at the first meeting, but I have a sense that in Co-Ryman we have quite a strong passion to do things for our local community first. And I've got a sense that at post-COVID, we're heading into, you know, quite a lot of deprivation that we probably haven't seen, you know, rising energy bills and such like. And we seem to be suggesting that it's hard work to work out what our local community needs. I'm not so sure it is that difficult, because we've got community councils, we've got community planning. There's a lot of information around. And I think that, you know, we should put our energies into the local community before we should go international.
Can I just come back on that, Irene? The reason I suggest that, just to be clear why I've put that suggestion, is that the group that's sitting around this Zoom call this evening is geographically disparate.
Yeah.
So we've all got, you know, there's probably what, 15 communities represented. So that's I'm not joining the new club. I'm your district secretary, but I'm not pushing things one way or the other. But my suggestion was that is a way of drawing people together when they're disparately set out throughout the country. But it's entirely up to the new club what they start off with first.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I was just voicing that I think we've got a very rising need locally, and that means for all of us in the northeast or central and north in 1010.
No, I think it's great to hear everybody's suggestions, so we can think about which way we're best placed to go, definitely. But you're right, Irene, I mean, obviously the energy prices are just about set to hike again. We'll hear about that very shortly, how the cap's going to change. More people are going to be pushed into fuel poverty. So I mean, that is maybe something that we could think of as a project, because there is lots of funding out there available for energy, sort of like top-up vouchers and cash vouchers. I don't know if anybody's heard of HACT, H-A-C-T. If you want to have a look at that, they do a lot of good work, especially around fuel poverty. But there are sort of lots of these charities that we can tap into. HACT look a lot at social value too. So what is the social value that something might bring, as opposed to the hard cash value? Because obviously soft outcomes are something that's much more difficult to measure. It's very easy to say if you've supplied somebody with pounds, but if you've supplied somebody with a better lifestyle, or they're less depressed, or they feel less stressed because of poverty, all these things have a social value, and there's a social value calculator that tells you what these are. So that's maybe something we can sort of tap into when we're looking at projects, as to how we're gauging it or monitoring it going forward. But obviously that would depend on what sort of projects people want to do. I don't know, does anybody have anything sort of that they're quite passionate about that they would want to pursue as a project?
I think if we could find a project that's across Scotland, across our district, that kind of addresses some of these issues perhaps, and if people want to put something in the chat of what could work across the district, and you know, Kath was right, there's one way of, if we can't get a district wide, perhaps we can get one international. There's many different ways of doing that, and it's just down to the imagination of the new members for doing that, I think.
Yeah, and it's probably putting people on the spot to ask them tonight, what sort of projects would you want? Because if it's not something you've really thought of so far, so it's always something that people can come back with. They can message Ken with any thoughts after. Sorry, I'm just I'm just volunteering you there, Ken.
That's fine. But we can also bring it up at the next meeting, and people can bring it back. So.
And that'll give everybody sort of some time to sort of reflect and think about. But I think if you do what I did, and you just start with a list of things that do interest you. Oh, for some reason, Paul, I can see your hand up. Yes.
I think one of the things that a few of us have talked about, and I guess it was mentioned around the geographical spread, is that with any new group, or at least in my experience, it's getting to actually know folk a bit better. You can either do that by doing a project, but I think also one of the words that, if you think about the wine glass or the leaf or whatever it was, that fun was there. So I think, if I'm allowed to use that word in Rotary circles, but I think identifying projects that are fun, that are going to be attractive, and actually demonstrate what we do. So yeah, there are some ideas that are out there. I shan't sort of disclose them all, but I guess sort of one idea sort of was sort of designing a cake or a dessert, which is on the theme of the sort of the new club. You might think that's a silly idea, but sort of I think something that allows us all to have some fun, get together, get to know each other. Because I think actually when you're relaxed, you're likely to be more creative. So I think there are things there that I think we could and should do, but it'd be good to get ideas from others that can then go alongside the more the more important international and local projects that we can do, but things that actually help build the team, I personally think are important.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So it might be good for people to also have a think about what sort of social activities that we might like to see, that we can meet up and sort of bring us together. That would be a good idea.
I've heard that Paul has great inspiration over mint cake, but Mike Dow's got his hand up.
Yes. Mike, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to, just very briefly, to reinforce Irene's point regarding the emphasis that our club, Climate St Andrews, has put on local charities. I know that membership is, a recurrent issue that we discuss. And I think that the strong impression I get is that the new members that we've recruited have been attracted to Rotary through the likely involvement in community service initiatives locally, rather than the international projects. Now, I'm not suggesting for 1 second that we don't consider international projects, but it's been the local ones that I think have been attractive to prospective members.
Okay, thanks, Mike. And I think Irene wants to come back.
Yeah, I run the risk of being a bit controversial here, Dawn, but I think twice
No,
you've said,
please, it makes a change from me. On you go.
you've said, what do we think, what interests us, and what do we have as good ideas? Yeah, there's a place for that, but I think it's a bit like, you're a new entrepreneur and you think, what new chocolate bar will I make? That's not relevant. It's what do people need and what do people want? And there's quite a lot, a couple of ideas. We've got food banks and we've got clothing banks, but they're also quite restrictive. There's a huge population, especially in Fife, not necessarily in the patch that Colriment has, but certainly elsewhere in Fife. People don't have bedding, they don't have beds. And so many, clothing banks say anything but, towels, bedding, etc. And yet people don't have that. And one of the things I've been trying to lead on is Shoe Aid, which is big in the northeast and in north of England now. We're not out of COVID, so we can't really get going with that. And some, areas do collect shoes, but shoes are things. So I think within our community, we need to establish what is needed, not what good ideas we have.
Yeah.
And there's a place for both, but we can't just drive it one way. I think we need to come back at it.
Yeah.
Never be frightened of being controversial here, Irene.
Well, I think Colriment know that.
Anne had her hand up. Anne Irvani.
Oh,
yes.
I'll
Thank you. I probably am not doing something quite right. I just stuck my hand up in the air here. My initial thought is, certainly from the area that I'm in, is that we are in danger possibly of A, reinventing the wheel, and B, maybe facing a problem with the established club in our local area. I mean, I have, when I was a member of the Tariff Club, I certainly wanted to try and do things, you know, and get other people involved who were not members, and that just wasn't on the cards. So, you know, you were talking about lack of beds, I mean, all sorts of things that people are without and suffering from. And there are so many charities, as Dawn mentioned, that are already doing that. So you can work with them. I was thinking of the Trussell Trust and the food banks, where I think there's probably going to be an even greater call on the food banks as things progress, as far as I can see. But, you know, there are also so many community organizations. In 5e, we've got 5e amenities, and we've got a community council, and lots of the villages round about have them as well. So, you know, what's the attraction for them in joining us? You know, Roddy, was it you, I think, mentioned somebody who went off and does things off their own bat. So why would they want to then say, oh, well, I'll do it under the Rotary label? They're quite happy doing it now, as they are.
Yeah, I'm happy to come back in that if you want, Anne.
Yeah, Roddy, if you want to.
For the simple reason that they become members of Rotary.
Okay.
And the advantages of being members of Rotary are enormous. And being part of that family now, as most of you will know, I've been around Rotary for a while and been involved nationally and internationally. And that kind of involvement for me is hugely beneficial personally. So I fundamentally believe in being a Rotarian, and not just a member of a club, because a Rotarian does things. But you also are part of that bigger family. So that's why, Anne.
Okay. I'm just thinking back to some research that we did, some market research some time ago, and it was on the streets around this area. And there were a lot of young people that we said, well, would you consider joining Rotary? And they said, no. He said, if I want to fundraise, I just go off and do it. I don't want the you know, the hassle of becoming a member and joining. So I mean, we're all free people here today. So some of us are members of Rotary and some of us are not. But if we're wanting to attract young people as well, and people who would maybe have plenty of energy and ideas and see what the needs are, then it might be more difficult. I don't know.
So I'm going
Just my fact anyway.
I'm going to take Kath and then Charlotte, and I think we need to move on after that. Just looking at the time, so.
Thank you. I don't particularly want to talk about projects. I wanted to, for a moment, put my district secretary hat on. I don't know if you noticed in the chat earlier on, I did make a comment. I can't remember. I think it was Brian that spoke about all the rules and regulations. Bear in mind that an awful lot of rules and regulations actually don't exist, but they're perpetuated by clubs because we've always done it this way. So there are incredibly few rules when it comes to the bit. So don't be put off by thinking there's too many rules. But the second thing I'd like to say is I think that we, you know, I'm here not because I'm joining the club and people know that, but I'm here as district secretary. I think the thing is that you, because those of you who are going to join, need to take a little bit of time to think, what does this club look like when it's up and running? And it doesn't look like the club you might be in just now or the club that you used to be in or the club that I'm in. It looks like something different because, Irene, you mentioned children's clothing banks, not in a glowing way, I noted, but you mentioned children's clothing banks, and our club successfully runs one, and that's the way we've attracted most of our members, the youngest of whom is 17. And there's a rule because that you can't have anybody younger than 18 in Rotary, but you can't find it anywhere, it's just imposed. So there's an example of rules, but I think you need to think about what does this look like in practical terms, because if I were in the club, what can I do as one person in the community, in the local community, apart from going to the local Rotary club and helping them? And why don't I join the local Rotary club anyway, or the other local Rotary club? So I think there's some thoughts and maybe guidance from Bob put up about the Club of Innovation, getting some information from them about the way that they run themselves. Thanks.
And I'm going to take Charlotte.
Can I come back just very briefly to the project idea? There's a tremendous project called a wrap-up project, which initiated many years ago in London, called Wrap Up London, and it's about collecting coats, warm winter coats and jackets. That's been run out over a number of Rotary clubs, but it is something that would cater for the needs of all the areas. And so it would be something that could be perhaps quite unifying, if that's what you're looking for. From my own personal experience, I would say involve youth. Ask them what they're going to do and get it organized. And boy, will they run with ideas. And if it doesn't work and they suddenly come along the road a little bit and they think, this is not going to happen, they'll tell you, or they'll tell you when they've had what they call a light bulb moment, and they'll change direction and they'll go again, and they will see they've got their ear to the ground in all our communities. They see what's going on. And just in response to what Kath was saying about international things, I belong to a Rotary Fellowship, which is totally international. The person who chairs the meeting is at 1 o'clock in California. That's 10 o'clock on a Saturday night here, and 8 o'clock on Sunday morning in New Zealand. And we're there. And the thing that, and some people who know me, the thing that unites us is that we sew, but we give the stuff away. And so it's, you know, nothing's impossible. It's just being inventive. And if you have a personal project, you can then, you know, introduce it to some other people or get them involved in it. And you know, you don't know where that will take you. Okay, Dawn.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Charlotte. Okay, so what are we moving on to now? Well, I think this is Ken's bit next as to how we move on with the process. So
let me share my screen. I'll take off spotlights off people at the moment. So I was asked to say, so what is the process for setting up a new club? And it's pretty simple, to be honest. If I just share this, there's 3 steps. First one is there a logic and a support for a new Rotary? And everything I've heard from the first meeting and from tonight, and from the response we've had from the, yeah, come along and find out, or people saying, look, sorry, I can't make it, but please keep me informed, tells me that that left-hand box is fulfilled. It's green. It's done. There is a logic, there is a support, there is ideas for doing something different. And we've heard lots of things in here tonight that can be distilled down, and quite right, we need to ask all of the new members when they move it. The middle stage is we believe we can actually get enough people, and enough people is 20. And at that point, we can actually go to Rotary Britain and Ireland and express our real interest. And then once we've got the 20, they're committed. And here's what happens. So in stage 1, we register the interest in a prospective name. And we need to think what that prospective name might be. The next one is, to get to the next stage, is what they call prospective members, a prospective club. We need a president, a secretary, and a treasurer. And we apply for prospective status with Rotary, with Britain and Ireland. And the third stage is, we've got the list of names, we've got over 20 people, and we apply to have full Rotary status. Pretty simple. So I think we're well on into this middle box, and we need to start thinking of the name for that. And the name might look like, well, the other thing is, once we get prospective status, there is a £500 grant from Rotary from the district. And you also at that point are insured for undertaking projects. So we can move that ahead. It's just you don't have quite the 20. I think we can actually move that second and third stage very, very quickly. I'm going to go back up and talking about a club name. Here's my suggestions. Avoid anything geographical. Don't put anything Rotary jargon in it. The charter itself will have the word the Rotary Club of, but when it goes to the outside world, don't use club. And the only other thing is we can't use a name somebody else has used anywhere else, and don't use 1010. I have had feedback. I spoke to Britain and Ireland about names, but consider something inspirational. And somebody used the word attractive. And I've kind of broken it up into active and attractive. What could you put in the name there? And something meaningful that's going to attract prospective Rotarians. A couple of recent names, and these are online clubs. Trust me, that first one, the Rotary International Rotary E-Club of 1210, was about twice that length to begin. Can you actually say to somebody, come and join this? International Business Envoys, that's in London District, in I'll get the district number wrong, 1130 I think it is. I don't think there's somebody from the UK in that almost, and that's very much like our own E-Club of Aviation, which is nice and short and sharp, and it means something to the people and members because they've got an interest in aviation. But they've got members from Australia through to California. And the current president, I think, is somebody in Switzerland. So there's my piece for that. We need to start thinking of a name so we can move it forward. People might have some thoughts. People might even want to start putting thoughts in the chat if they want.
I believe there's also a bottle of semi-decent, I'm going to say semi-decent, it'll probably be the Co-op's finest, wine up for whoever comes up with the best and the chosen name.
You're not going to win that, are you?
Well, I'm going to try. But if anybody has any sort of names just off the top of their head, please feel free to put them in the chat box.
Okay, there's just questions on membership going on.
I see that, yes. I think we've sort of established that we would see anybody in this club as also sort of just being a Rotary member and dipping it in and out of other projects, whatever they fancy, to be honest.
Can I ask, Don, Cass put a comment in the chat room about remaining a member in your current club until the new club is actually chartered. Could we ask Cass just about the mechanics of the process?
That's a great idea.
Of those who are current Rotarians who hopefully will form this new club?
Yes, there is no problem about remaining in your current club at the present moment if you're in a club. The practical application of that is that perhaps you advise your current club what you're going to do, and maybe you stop going to their meetings or projects, and you become part of this group and get involved. And when the application goes in, as Ken has outlined, there will be a charter date chosen for you. There are advantageous charter dates to choose if you have a lot of new members, because they get an amnesty from paying fees for a while. Unfortunately, continuing members don't. But what will happen is that on the day that the new club is chartered, Rotary GB&I will transfer you from the current club to the new club. I say it happens in a day, it doesn't actually. My own experience of being involved in a new club was that it took about 10 days for it all to come through, but there's no great problem with that. So that's the technical aspect of it. You don't need to resign, don't need to do anything of that. You will be, unless you wish to resign, of course, but you'll be transferred to the new club. I just pick up from Bob Thompson, whole club council meetings of the Innovation Club, and good on them for doing that. There are issues about that I would explain to you, not now because it's boring, but there are issues around having everybody on the club council.
Great. Thanks, Kath.
Thank you. I think Paul had created a list of questions and answers that people might like to know. They might have been thinking of the questions or not even really realised they needed to ask the question. Do you have that to share, Ken, or Paul, do you have it?
Paul has it, I hope.
Hopefully everybody can see that.
Yep.
So I wouldn't propose that we go through this line by line, but what we can do is send this out to everybody that's attended and also to those that have registered interest. But I'll just quickly go through the headings. So what is this new event? So some of this is maybe trying to act as a sales pitch for folk who maybe haven't come along to these calls. And there are a number out there that I think we know of. So what is this venture? Why are we setting it up? And I think that picks up on some of the bits that folk have mentioned about communities changing. We want to create something that's attractive and suit the population with a range of different lifestyles, meeting online, but also folk getting together. And I think just picking up on some of the points, we would support local community initiatives, including those of other clubs. What will it be called? That's what the competition is about. And I've got the bottle of wine on my table here, so somebody better come up with a good sort of name, or else it might disappear. How will it work? So again, that's something we've touched upon it, but again, working closely with others. What will it do? We've touched upon projects, regional, national, and international. But very much getting a view from the members, not for the club council to decide and tell everybody what the group's going to do. So very, very democratic. And if there's something that one individual has passion for, then they do it and ask for support. How will it be different? So picking out some of the words, minimum of formality. So I think echoing the point that sort of Kath made. And we'd actually draw upon experience of other groups and also looking outside. Might sound like heresy, but Rotary won't have all the answers. There may be other organizations out there that we should maybe just speak to and see if there's other good practice. What are the mechanics of joining the club? This is a very shorthand piece, but we'll work offline and just make sure this is all factually correct. Membership cost, well, we haven't set that. I guess that's a detail that will have to be sorted out in sort of due course, but I don't believe it would be prohibitive. What area will it cover? Yeah, sort of maybe initially it's this area, but why would we not have members from other areas like Charlotte's mentioned and the Aviation Club? What will be the commitment? Basically sort of for something that works for you and works for your personal circumstances, but really want to attract a diverse group of people who want to make a difference in their communities. How will it work with other clubs? Yeah, sort of work with them, support them, sort of be an extra pair of hands. I would hope that it would work the other way around as well. And most importantly, how much cake and wine will be consumed. Yeah, the intent is for face-to-face, but it may be allied to the point I made earlier about sort of how do we actually get to know each other to start to actually deliver things and sort of make a difference that will actually then, as a result, make a real difference in our communities and wider afield. So as I said, we'll send this round, folk, maybe later on this week, once we've checked some of the details with Kath, and then this will be a living document, so we can add to it. So if there's any other questions, then maybe fire them in via Ken, and we'll make sure those are covered.
That's great. Thank you very much, Paul. Just in the discussion of membership fees, Kath, can you sort of shed any light on sort of that? How much, or you know, how is that worked out?
How it's worked out is you'll need to take the fee that's paid annually to Rotary in Britain and Ireland, which they then pass on some to Rotary International. That's £67 per year currently. And then you need to add on a district subscription, which is currently nil, but we'll go back to something else once the pandemic is over. It was £14 before that. The clubs that sort of exist on the bare minimum probably charge their members £96 a year or £8 a month. You know, as Paul said, you can have any sort of flexible payment plans that you want in place. I would think you'd be lucky, bearing in mind that you have to pay the RIBI fee and ultimately the district fee to get it much lower than £8 a month. You know, you may be talking of taking it down to 7, so it's 7 or 8. There are clubs, of course, who have huge payments, but that's probably what you would do. But you need to maybe just think of if you want to buy at club level anything else. But again, if the group is mainly meeting remotely, then perhaps there's not much call for some of the things that other clubs might have. I'm thinking about gazebos and things like that. And perhaps the answer to that is that if you're working in a particular location and there's a Rotary club close by, that maybe they would lend you something. That's what I'd be doing.
You'd think
So I would say maybe about £8 a month, 96 a year.
Okay, well, that's because we do want something that's not prohibitive to anybody joining. So certainly if £8 a month would hopefully be manageable for most people. And I guess if there's anything else we need, we can either beg, borrow, steal, or fundraise to get it.
I'd advise against the stealing, but otherwise
right.
I don't want to deal with that, Dawn.
What's about petty theft between
amongst Rotary clubs? No problem at all.
Charlotte has her hand up. Charlotte.
Sorry, Charlotte.
Sorry, I shouldn't have had. I should have taken my hand down. I do apologize. And can I just say that we have within the district an international contact just now through the Peace Fellow, Humaira, who's studying in Bradford. And as I understand it, the district will have a Peace Fellow next year. Now she comes, this year's one comes from Iran. I don't know about next year's one, but there's a contact, and the kind of things that they're studying and the kind of work they've been involved in and they want to move on might be a link to pursue.
Mm-hmm. You
know, and that's Rotary International, and they are amazing, inspiring people. That's all I will say on that subject.
Thank you very much for that. That's really interesting, Charlotte. Okay, so what time are we at? 20 past, just before Ken's shouting at me to stop talking. So go to the cost question and answer. So I guess the next thing we need to think about is moving forward. Obviously, Ken's shown us the 3 stages. I think we've definitely got the interest. So we've got the first one ticked off. I think there's a fair chance we have, with people that are here tonight, people that were here last time that couldn't come, that if we don't have 20, we must be very, very close to it. So I'm guessing what we need to think of now is really people considering if they want to be a part of it, if it's something they're interested in, and then thinking of, for next time, some projects that we could look at, start with. If anybody has any fundraising ideas, if anybody has any ideas for social events, that would also be good. We need to look at the name. Obviously, Paul's got his bottle of wine. Are we seeing the bottle of wine, Paul? Or is that a well-kept secret? Oh, what have we got? There we go. Excellent. It does exist. Happy days. He might even throw in a bit of mint cake to go with it. I hear he's got a good supplier. So we have a think about the name. And as Ken said too, we need to think about a president, a secretary and a treasurer. So if people want to give some thought to any of those positions, that would be absolutely excellent. Is there anything else that anybody wants to ask or add this evening? Or is everybody stunned into silence? Deep thought, trying to work out how they can win the bottle of wine.
So
Ken,
just one thing. There's been a couple of mentions in the chat this evening about the E-Club of Aviation, of innovation. It might actually be worth inviting Martin Brocklebank from them. He speaks very well, and he could certainly share the type of things they do. And I know Bob Thompson, I can't see him on the screen just now, but I know that he's so enthused that he keeps going along to them.
Okay.
And remember, Ronnie's a member of the E-Club of Innovation.
Oh, there you go then, Ronnie. So you would recommend that, I guess. And Ranald, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, we're just talking about there seems to be the fellowship side of things, of people getting together to meet. But I mean, I thought it was the whole idea of this was to be district-wide. So there's folk, you're in Forest, Ken, I'm in Dundee, there's others in St Andrews, and folk all over the place. So the practicalities of getting together for social events, to me, seem limited. And then when we talk about fundraising, how are you going to do that if there's just 2 or 3 you in a small community?
I think that's an answer that if we get Martin Brocklebank along, he will be delighted to tell us. And in terms of the meeting together, I'm just going to jump in here because I know there's 1,000 people trying to get in here and just say what they think. They could come together in geographical groups, probably, Ranald.
Yeah, okay.
And then perhaps once a year they could come together as a whole group, or whatever they want. But if it's geographical, a virtual balloon race. I know,
and social media is a wonderful place for fundraising. There are so many things that run on there all the time. So a lot of it's already almost exists. We just have to steal other people's ideas on how to do certain things. But certainly for socializing, okay, it makes it slightly more difficult, but 1010's not, it's not huge. I mean, it's not that far from here to Dundee or wherever, you know.
I think what we'll have to do, Ranald, is think differently. I mean, I'm looking at the screen just now. There are a number of people on the screen I could have coffee with, and probably we all live within half an hour of one another. So immediately you've got half a dozen Rotarians who can meet to do things. It's different, and we've got to think differently.
And Ronnie has his hand up. Ronnie.
Yes, good evening. I've been a member of the Innovation Club for only a short time, but amongst the things that they have done is to have a virtual dog show, a virtual cat show. They launched a virtual greeting card exercise. There are, I mean, once you start thinking like that, there are lots and lots of things to do. My or I shouldn't say it, but my disenchantment with the innovation thing is it is too international.
Okay.
That's really interesting, because I think Dawn, lots of, sorry.
Closeness and genuine, much more genuine friendship and fellowship.
I think a lot of people have indicated that sort of local projects or community-based is what they're most interested in. So international has its place, but I think you're also saying that you'd prefer something local that's closer to you.
Well, I once was close to a senior politician who happened to own a pub, and he said the first thing you've got to do is make sure that the public bar works. He said once you've got that set up and running, then you can start thinking about fancy meals and bits and pieces. But until you've got your public bar making money, forget all the trimmings.
Wise words indeed. Thank you. Frank, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, can I thank you for organising this meeting and let me participate, because I explained to Ken that I'm not proposing to join this new club. I just far too many other commitments, but I was very interested to hear about what you're doing and I admire the initiative. But I do have a kind of devil's advocate question. I don't see why you need a new club to do what you're proposing. It seems to me all the things you're talking about can be done through the existing Rotary network. I don't see the need for a new club, which in the fullness of time would take people away from the clubs that they already belong to. So I don't get it.
I would be happy to share a video clip, which I don't have here at the moment, that explains exactly why that works. It's whether it's the format's not right in the current club for the people, whether the cost base is not right, whether the time it meets is not right. And we're creating another Rotary opportunity for people coming in where they can do it in the way that they want, and they can create that for the way they want it. So
I agree, but that all of those things are true for the club that I currently belong to. But what we need to do is change the way we operate.
Absolutely. The thing is, some of the clubs don't want to. And we're not trying to steal them. We're trying to create an avenue for Rotary where people want to stay. I want to be a Rotarian.
And we're also we're not looking to be just continuously stealing other members. We're looking for new people to come in that are inspired by what we're doing and the way that we're doing it.
Of course, but that's my aspiration for our club as well. So I still don't really see why you have to have a new club. I mean, we need to do these things you're talking about, but it seems to me the first, at least initially, one should be trying to do it through the existing organisation and the existing clubs.
People have possibly tried and failed.
Kath, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I mean, as a member now of a new club that's just celebrated its second anniversary, thriving, 30 members from none 2 years ago. And why have we got the members? Because other clubs won't change. And I hear an awful lot about, as district secretary, about how clubs are going to change and how they've got members in the pipeline. But that pipeline is fractured because they're not coming through. And we really, if we want, you know, in this district, I've got figures somewhere, we have, I think, 12 people under the age of 30. Now that's stunning in itself. What's more stunning is that the majority of us, including myself, are over 70. And sadly, and I don't like to say this because I've experienced it closely, the older you get, the nearer you get to death. So that we act, I know Frank, it's funny, but so that we won't exist. So we've got to get new members. And sadly, and with the greatest of respect to you all, then I can bring you young members to speak here if you want. They don't want what we're selling. They don't want the product which many of us are selling currently. So we've got to change if we're going to exist. And as you probably know I'm quite passionate about that and obviously support this new club. Younger people want something totally different to what we are offering just now. So that's my experience.
Thanks,
I
Kath.
feel quite young with all these people, by the way. That's why I mix with them.
My takeaway, Dawn, just before you close it, is if you want to know what a Rotary should look like, don't ask a Rotarian. Ask a prospective Rotarian and then make the product meet that. And this that's what I think this club should be doing and will be doing. Dawn, so
thank you. Well, that's perfect. I totally agree with you, Ken. Thank you all very much for your input this evening. It has been absolutely fantastic, as always. Really wonderful to hear everybody's points of view. So, as I said, for next meeting, if we can think of projects, the name, the President, Secretary, Treasurer, if anybody has any interest in these positions, fundraising ideas, just anything you can think of to come with to the next meeting. Also bring a friend with you, bring several that you think might be interested. And I think we're looking at for the next meeting to hold it in a short space of time, just so we can sort of move on with things. So we're looking at the 15th of February at 6:30 again. I'm guessing you'll put out an invite, Ken?
I'll get that put out
for people to come along. And that's it. That's this evening. And thank you all very much again for attending. And hopefully I'll see you all again soon.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.